Welcome to Fans of the Forge, where today we are recapping Season 5, Episode 21, The Anthropomorphic Sword.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am Sean. We have, to my right,
Chris.
no Teresa.
She's at camp again.
She's camping. It's all good.
Last week at camp for the summer. She'll be back next week.
All right. So, if you're missing her, don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. So, starting off with these guys, we have Bill. 40 years of part-time experience.
Yeah, an older gentleman.
An older gentleman. I think he said he was in his 70s.
I believe so.
Something like that. Then we have Bret, who is a part-time smith with 6 years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, part-time, 35 years experience. And Cole, part-time, 5 years. Or is that full-time? Full-time. Full-time, 5 years experience. So, let's get to our picks. Let's see. Teresa.
We all picked Chuck.
We all picked Chuck as our main pick. And then Teresa and I had Bret as our underdog. And Chris had Cole as his underdog.
Right.
So, let's get to it.
Right down to business. Let's go.
All right. So, Will does his reveal. What do they have? Well, it's on, is it on their anvils? Yes, it's on their anvils. I'm sorry.
Covered on their anvils.
Reveal, big nuts.
Big nuts.
Yeah, big industrial size nuts you would see on like a bridge or some crazy shit. With a piece of, W1, I'm sorry. W1 billet with the nut.
Yep.
So, as explained, the nut is low carbon. The W1 is high carbon. You guys have to forge weld somehow the two together in some way or fashion, whatever. So, they also mention the testing will be a dual strength test.
First ever
Dual strength test. So, they're going to take your knife, they're going to baton smash it onto one of these big nuts, and then they're going to hammer it vertically into some plate steel, some, sheet metal.
Yes.
So, but no specs are given, no design window. They just say, get to it.
Right. Well, as we've come to find out, when it comes to the specs, even when they're not given on the show, they're given specs to make their blade too. But I have a feeling if it's not going to, like in the judging aspect, if it doesn't come down to any of them being so far outside the specs that it has to be, that's going to be an issue that they're not
why mention it? You know, if it's it has to be between what's a 10 and 14 or
that's a
14, 16, whatever.
Pretty solid.
If they're all within it, then why specify it? Whatever. But you know, honestly, I'm thinking now. You know, who would make a sword? No one, right?
No.
You're not going to try to do that. You know, especially with the materials given and the testing. So, I think generally people would have blades pretty much in line. But anyhow, okay, moving on to the forging. So Chuck, he tries to forge weld to mostly the W1.
Right. So he took a small piece of the nut that I believe he was the one that first figured out.
He went with the torch.
Yeah, the torch. He just brought the torch out, cut through it. Everybody followed suit after that.
Yeah.
The chop saw
was not getting it done.
Couldn't do it.
And then he went with this mild steel as integral guard or bolster, which was a pretty good idea. You know, he's not trying to do a sandmai. He's not really trying to do, you know, something that's going to take a lot of time. He made a bolster out of it, and
that way he doesn't have to worry about the mild steel affecting his edge sharpness.
Yeah, you know, he's not like, oh, I got to grind this off, nothing like that. No, it's at the bolster. That's where it is. You don't have to worry about it. Cool. So he's doing his thing. It's looking good, and he does a quench. And then he turns off his burners, and he's like, yeah, all right. And then he checks it with his file. Oh, whoops.
Not hard.
It's not all the way hard. Okay, got to fire him back up. Jen Nielsen's like, hey, kids, at home, like, make sure you check for hardness before you turn your blades off or your burners off. So anyway, he does another heat treat, does another quench, gets it done. And then, so Cole, he mentions he's going to try a sanmai or, try to do the taco style.
Like the lay-in into like the taco or the hot dog bun sort of style.
And for some reasons unknown to us, and probably, I don't know, every viewer out there, at some point, Cole's just doing his thing, and what they say, like, "Hey, Cole, like, you're looking good." And it's all of the judges and Will holding up
somebody
these
said, we need to take a closer look. The judges need to take a closer look.
They all hold up these little, like, opera, like, glass, or binoculars.
Opera binoculars.
Miniature binoculars.
It was an odd moment with no context.
None.
At all.
Cole just kind of looks at him like, whoa, what?
He's confused. You just see him just like,
and then the judges all just start laughing.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting.
I'm glad to see them having fun on the show, especially they had Jay Nielsen was in there for that one. So to see Jay Nielsen
lighten it up a little
bit, it's nice.
Cole was working on his point before the forge welding.
He was just out of order with the order of operations, it seemed. He should have tried to forge weld the material together first, then start working on the point and the sharp and the edge.
It was kind of weird. And he was smashing it and possibly weaken the blade. And then to meet the requirements, because he had this blob of metal on top of his blade, and then he got rid of it. He said, well, what I'll do is I'll just drill a hole. I'll make a rivet. I'll stick a rivet of this low carbon into my blade, and that'll be it. And that's what he did.
And the judges weren't happy about that.
They were like wincing, like this thing was done for. Like it put his knife in it.
I mean, it was already possibly weakened from the smashing he did on it to try to get the thing to forge weld after he had
It was already thin.
Yeah.
And he said, well, now you're putting a hole in it. That's not going to be good. Okay, fine. He put a hole in it, but he put a pin in it. So I don't know if it really...
Well, when you drill, because it's two different materials, the rivet's not going to really maintain the strength of the W1 anymore.
But at least it's not an open hole.
Right. It's not
an open hole.
But when it comes to how the stress in that W1 is, it's not going to be taking the stress the way the rest of the W1
Well, I agree,
is.
yes.
So that's kind of what they were concerned
this was his
about.
kind of workaround.
Right.
I guess he could have done it in a tang too. I don't know. It was kind of...
He figured it out.
He did some sort of little,
It was within the rules.
trickery. So then we move on to Bret. He's going for a sanmai. He had a lot of flux usage. Kind of incorrectly describes what the flux is used for. He's like, it's filling voids and all sorts of shit. And he had trouble with his burners in his forge, and he's turning the knobs. He's actually turning them down. He can't get it up to temperature. And then he goes over to Bill, and Bill's like, yeah, righty tighty, lefty loosey, open them up, and then it'll get more fire out of it. And he's like, okay, and he tries it out. Oh yeah, he was right. No shit, dude. Haven't you turned a faucet on before? You don't know anything. So anyway,
but we can't pick on people. It's a very stressful competition, and sometimes the most common sense things can go right out of your brain in a situation like that.
So Bret, sorry, buddy. I mean, just saying. From my perspective, it's just silly. But moving on, he went for a differential heat treat. So he grabbed some scrap metal, clamped it onto his blade, took the torch, was kind of heating it up, just be the blade, the knife edge that he's heat treating.
Yep.
To leave just the rest of the blade kind of soft to absorb the shock of the test, but his torch usage was a little kind of off, so he's heating one part, then would go to the other part.
Right.
And by doing that, it's not an even heat all the way across. It's not, and Nielsen pointed it out. So, you got to go even with it, get the whole thing up, because you're going from spot to spot, and it's not going to work out. Anyway, quenches it, and it's not hard. It just wasn't hard because it just wasn't done well. So with about 45 to 30 seconds left,
it was just been the minute point when he decided to stick it back into the forge.
So the blade's kind of cold, puts it in. Judges basically collapse and die. They all die.
They all die.
They all die.
The show's over.
Seeing this, they all have cardiac arrest, and they can't believe what they're seeing. And with about literally like 1 second left, he takes it out. It's gray. There's no red in that thing. It's gray. He puts it in the quench tank and pulls it out, and
Jay Nielsen was just like, you took any hardness you put into it using that differential heat treat right out by doing that.
Any partial hardness that there was is now gone because it was heated up and then softened and not up to temperature enough to be effective. So,
and that was the point where Doug came in with that comment.
Yes, Doug comment. They're talking about, by doing that, the heat treat's gone, the blade's soft, and then Doug says, "Oh, it's just a tip."
And Sean and I both picked up.
I rewound it a couple of times. Like, did he just say just a tip?
It was very quick cut of just Doug saying just the tip, and it wasn't. It was almost a little bit out of context for the rest of what the conversation. It was almost like that. It kind of fit the conversation just enough so that they could shoehorn it in at the end and then cut to the next scene immediately.
Yeah, I mean the whole blade wasn't hardened, so it wasn't just the tip, but they left it in there. That's cool. So then Bill kind of laid low in a sense, slow and steady.
Mm-hmm.
San Mai, he's kind of moving at his own pace, and I was getting worried because it was like halfway through and he's like, oh man, the time's just flying by, and it didn't, I was worried he wasn't going to be able to finish some portion or whatever, but he did fine. Mm-hmm. And at the end, he had like a towel in his hand that caught on fire, and like, Bill, you're on fire.
And he's just like slowly,
he's
just
like,
nah.
Oh, there we go.
I've caught on fire in my shop plenty of times.
Yourself on fire all the time. So we move on to the judging here. So Bill, he had a good design. His tang was slightly offset, but fixable.
Yep.
Chuck, his blade was very thick, and he needed to lighten it up.
It's interesting there. That premonition of sorts for how things turned out for him as we go through with the final testing and stuff, and we'll see. Oh, I gave away round 3, but it's not like if you're watching this, you haven't watched the episode yet. So
most likely. Yes.
Anyway, continue.
Anyway, so Baker explained it. With a thick blade, if you're doing a water bottle slice in the final testing after round 2, thick blades aren't going to cut very well. So I think that's when he said it there.
Yeah.
Move on to Cole. Not a great design for the test. He had like a weird tip, so trying to cut or smash through the sheet metal probably wasn't going to work out too well for him. And Bret, his blade was not properly hardened, so he got the boot.
He got booted, and that was your Aunt Teresa's underdog picks right there.
So that's gone.
Bret is gone. So, moving into round 2. There was another surprise in round 2.
Yes, there was.
They had another curtain to pull back, a little hidden surprise to show them, a hidden gem. So it was a foundry. And the contestants had to cast bronze for their pommel for this weapon. So they had to basically cast a bronze pommel and then thread it, and then thread that onto the tang.
Right, so they didn't have enough shit to do normally. Now they have to cast it and thread it.
And put a regular handle on still.
Right, so normal and take care of any things with their blades. That
they had to sharpen it. Stuff up. So
whatever.
It was interesting the way that it played out. Bill, when he was going through his work, he straightened his tang first thing, but in doing that, made it a little thinner than the judges would like. But otherwise, it was really not that hard for him to get through that stuff. His cast didn't set properly, but he was able to use the scrap that came through.
It like
a little.
His form just kind of pulled apart. He had some bronze ooze out, and there was like a little puddle of it, and he used that as his.
He just kind of cleaned
He's
it
like,
up.
hey, there you go. He's like, perfect.
Well, he wasn't the only person to do that, because for Cole, he didn't pack his sand tight enough. So when his came out, Will Willis called it a cat turd of bronze.
Yeah, it was a cat turd.
And the cat turd of bronze was what he ended up using. So he still just salvaged whatever fell out.
Yeah, he's like, oh, there's a thick enough piece in that I can use.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And then Chuck, he designed a very small pommel, just big enough to be able to get a thread into it and make it easy to cast. So he didn't really have any issues casting his.
He kind of thought outside the box, and he did a really good job. I mean, it wasn't trying to do anything fancy with it. He had a bucket of that sand, and he took a piece of pipe, shoved it in there, pulled out a core basically, so it had a hole.
Yeah.
And he just poured just enough to make the exact. It was about that, like an inch and a half or so.
Yeah.
Of pommel, and it was perfect. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and he had it, packed enough so that he didn't have to worry about separation or leakage.
I didn't have to worry about anything. Yeah, it was perfect. And even if it did leach out a little bit, that's why you grind that off.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a perfect like round form.
It was easy to clean. So
let's continue with the testing.
Let's go. So we got our tests, the dual strength tests. That being said, Sean already kind of explained it. Baton smash on the big nuts along the edge of your blade, and then your blade is held upright with the tip facing down on top of sheet metal, and the baton would come crashing down on that cast pommel. So, Bill was first up. He got through the 3 smashes on the big nuts.
Yeah.
Though he did have significant chipping.
Major chipping.
Yeah, major chipping going on. And then he also made it through the pommel smash into the sheet metal, but the tip of his blade broke off.
Yeah, it was stuck in the.
Yeah, it's still stuck in there. And so they pulled it off. Jay Nielsen was like, well, you got some chipping, and you got the tip broken off, but otherwise, it doesn't look bad. It still is probably.
I mean, it was like 2 or 3 major chips out of the edge, and like. He's like, yeah, it's still all right. I'm like, okay.
I mean, I have to assume, because I'm pretty sure that the judges do these tests and like they do these challenges beforehand to make sure it's possible. So my guess is that Jay Nielsen probably created a knife the same way and then did this test and saw just what sort of damage you could get from this. So maybe he was expecting that sort of damage to show up.
Perhaps. Because I know they've done baton smashes before. It's usually it's like wood or like bone or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's been like a major.
They have done a bolt before.
Yeah, the bolt.
The bolt one. So my guess is that he had some experience and he knew what to look for when he was doing the test.
You're going to expect some damage out of that.
Yeah. So moving on. Chuck, he was up on his edge for the baton smash on the edge portion on the nuts, and his blade broke. Just catastrophic failure on the 3rd strike. Broke. And Cole, it came down to, can Cole make it past the 3rd strike?
3.
And lo and behold, he could not. His broke catastrophically on the 2nd strike.
Yeah, and I was a little confused because they cut. There's a commercial break right when Bret's like starts.
Yep.
They show they kind of showed one hit. It cuts to him like, oh, bow on his head. Then it comes back and it's the same hit.
Yep.
But I was like, is that the 2nd hit? And then it broke on the next, and I was like, oh, he did 3. Well, what's gonna happen now? Well, no, I'm sorry, it was the 2nd hit. So I was like, oh,
yeah.
Okay.
They replayed it after the commercial, I guess as a refresher, but it could be easily seen as being.
They could have easily just started the test right after the commercial, not. Like, okay, we're going to start the test now.
It should have cut to commercial like Jay Nielsen lifts it up.
Right.
And then cut to commercial, and then it cut bam, bam. But anyway, Cole did not beat the third strike that he needed to beat.
3 strikes you're out.
3 strikes you're out. Except
2 strikes, go home.
Okay.
Something like that.
So Cole got the boot. And we move on to round 3 between Bill and Chuck.
Round 3. Anthropomorphic Sword. It's a Celtic weapon. There wasn't like a lot of history. It was from the Iron Age.
Yeah.
It had like a double point or something like that. Used for slashing and stabbing and killing people.
Yeah, and it had like double. The way it was designed, it was like tapered down from the center on both sides. So, I mean, it was a sweet looking blade. And I thought that the idea of the anthropomorphic aspect of it being that the handle has little arms and legs and a head.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It looked like a gingerbread man was on the handle.
Yeah.
So the blade had to be between 22 and 23 inches and light enough to wield with one hand and have a cast bronze pommel and guard.
Yes.
In the shape of a person. It had to be anthropomorphic.
Right. And so what they showed, because it's just the pommel and guard, it really could be a chunk for the legs and a chunk for the arms. And the head could either be part of the arms or it could even be its own separate piece depending on how you attached it to everything.
Right. It had to have some humanoid figures and features to it.
Yes.
So, Bill, day 1.
But before we get into that, do you just have one thing
what do you got?
Well, the fact that they have to do these cast bronze pommels.
So you think this is the whole in-forge studio was a prep for them to do this at home?
Yeah, they've done that before. In fact, other episodes, Will Willis has specifically said, "We did this challenge to prep you for your final round," and it was in a recent one actually.
Okay.
But that's not what I'm getting at. Do you think these guys had their own foundries, or the show had to have set them up at the foundry?
Absolutely. They didn't have any experience, especially Chuck.
Right.
He didn't have experience with this stuff because when he was at home, he was struggling with it like crazy. It was bad news for him, and so no way. They sent them home with those the foundries and whatnot. So, they had to. How many bladesmiths have a foundry?
Yeah, no, really, that's not going to be...
unless that's something they normally do or do some other sort of work, it's not probably like a common thing that someone would have. So,
no.
And they're not going to make them go out and find one and buy one just for this challenge. So...
Well, even part of the rules for the show, from what I've heard from...
You can't go out and buy shit.
Yeah, you can't go out and buy stuff or borrow stuff that you don't have on hand already.
And you usually don't have much time to even have a chance to do that.
No.
It's usually like you fly home the next day you're making.
Yep.
So Bill, day 1, he's going for a Damascus blade, a high layer Damascus blade.
I don't remember exactly how many. I thought he said 60 something layers.
Yeah, it was a high count. So he's got his metal going, he's got his power hammer going, he's pulling out his billet, looking good. All right. Day 3, he has some issues with his casting.
Mm-hmm. It had to do with the green foam that he was using.
He's using like florist foam.
Yeah, florist foam.
Yeah, it didn't like melt properly or something like that.
Well, it wasn't quite the right consistency or whatever make of foam to be able to hold up properly. So it didn't hold up as well as he was expecting to.
Well, I mean, it shouldn't.
It was they were packing it around with sand anyway.
You think it was deforming the foam when they were packing it?
I don't know.
I thought it just probably wasn't melting the way foam should, like normal foam would melt when foundries are used. That would be my thought.
Wait, is that how?
Yeah, because you pour it and it it eats that foam, it melts through it because it's molten, and that's why you use foam.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I didn't catch that part because I thought that they were using the foam. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
They weren't making a void out of it because then you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
What you do is, you carve the piece of foam, put it in the sand, pack the sand, and you have
a top part.
It's supposed to have like a little like hole or way for the molten metal to get into the foam, and it just burns through it, and that is how you cast your piece. So that didn't work out for him. So what he did, which was pretty cool, is he I forget what he said, like he cookie cuttered it. So he carved this thing out of wood, and then put that into the sand, pulled it out, and then just poured the bronze in to make that shape.
Yep.
So that worked out for him.
Mm-hmm.
And day 4, he threaded the tang, added his African blackwood handle.
Looked very nice.
And he was good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, day 1. He was using he was also going for Damascus
originally, and then he also had a 1095 billet bar set aside as well.
Yeah, in case the Damascus wasn't working out, and it showed him just hand forging his Damascus, and for the sword of this length, that's going to be a lot of work, and so he did end up abandoning that, went with this 1095 bar.
I don't know why I put 4041 billet. I wrote that down for some reason, but I don't recall what that was. Now thinking back on
I don't know if I have my my notes saying anything.
But anyway, as Sean looks for that, his goal for this was to cast his handle directly to the tang of the weapon. And
no, I don't have any notes on the metal.
No. So he tried casting to the tang, failed miserably.
I thought that was a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I agree.
To cast it right onto the tang. I'm like, baller.
The one thing I would be concerned about, I guess, and I'm sure he could fix it after the fact, is even if you cast it onto the end of that tang, I didn't see the end of the tang really. Like,
I don't know if he was going to leave a spot so they could.
If it had if the tang at the end had a spot that was wider so that it would help hold the metal on there. I didn't know. I didn't see that. But if it was a regular tang that just gets skinnier as you go, there's the possibility that even if it's casted around it, wouldn't necessarily hold if you were just swinging at something.
Right, especially if it's tapered, it could slide right off.
So, again, I didn't get a good look at it, so it's hard to really say what happened there. But he couldn't get that thing to cast properly. He tried 2 days in a row.
Yeah, I mean, day 5, he went for it again, and it was a failure.
Yeah, it was bad.
And he was starting to flip out, and he's like...
He almost said he was going to, quit.
And he's like, well, it's not fair to Bill. Bill's making, a finished weapon. I have to bring some. So he he didn't quite show it, but I didn't know what he was gonna do. He's basically said, I'm not gonna. He didn't really say I'm not gonna do the cast handle. It just showed him cut to he fucked up on the second casting. Then it cuts to him welding some stuff on his handle, and I'm like, I know you can't. As far as I know, you can't weld bronze. You can braze metals and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that's not what he was doing. He had his welder going. He was doing stuff. I'm like, okay, well, he's got something figured out. We'll see what happens when they bring it to the show. Well, they bring him on. Bill goes for the first test. They have a couple of rams hanging.
Mm-hmm. Rams, yep.
Which is a first, I think. I've never seen a ram on the show.
And I've heard that. I think Bill was saying that that makes sense for the type of area that these were used. It's very possible that a sword like this could be swung against a ram. I mean, obviously they're probably not, don't know. I don't know how they would have hunted rams back in the day. But I guess this was a good test historically, according to Bill. So
I suppose. Anyway.
Yes.
So Doug takes it. One swing, cuts the ram 3/4 of the way through. Another swipe, the ram is down. Doug loves the blade. He loves all the work done to it. He's really happy with it. It's really light. And he was like, the only thing I don't like is that it's too light because I couldn't have fun with it.
Yeah, it's too good. It was too good of a blade, and it just cut right through.
So then it's Chuck's turn.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug picks up his weapon and is kind of getting ready and
walks right over to that ram like he's going to...
Walks over to it, and then he's like, I don't know, something's not right. Walks over to the rest of the judges. Will grabs Bill's sword. They bring it over. They're comparing. And Will returns both swords to the anvils. And Will says, well, I'm sorry, Chuck, but the parameters say this. You have to bring a weapon that can be wielded with one hand and has the guard is cast bronze. That's not what this is. Whatever it was. It was kind of weird looking too. That's why I couldn't really.
Well, from what I understand, it was just like he welded material on to make a blade, but that didn't see like
the handle. The handle material was. I couldn't tell what it was. It was a weird. It's not even like a pattern. It was just.
Like, is it possible to just keep?
I don't know what it
metal
was.
Around using a welder? Like
yeah,
that?
I guess you could. You could just keep hitting it, but I'm not sure. It was something he said is his style, but I don't know what it was. It looked kind of neat, but I didn't know what it was. Anyway, his handle was just all metal. It was just heavy chunk of metal for his handle, and it was too heavy.
It had some arms and legs. Yeah, it didn't have a head.
No,
it wasn't quite. It just wasn't right, and it didn't meet the parameters.
So they didn't even do the test for Chuck. Chuck was asked to leave the forge, and so Bill is the winner.
And it's like a wah-wah.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like, I felt bad for Chuck because
it's still 5 days of work that you put in on this blade, right?
And he just got stuck with this stupid foundry curveball.
Yeah, that foundry thing didn't help anybody. But Bill made it work, and Bill, 40 years part-time experience, showed through very well here. He didn't have that many real issues when he was doing it.
No, and he's pretty cool.
Methodical. He just went through the whole
he was
thing.
Collected the whole time. He knew what he was doing, and he was pretty, he's kind of a jolly guy too.
Yeah. So, congratulations, Bill, on this one. When I feel in some cases, an older guy, when we are looking at who we're picking, maybe gets overlooked because you think of them not being able to keep up with the time frame or the excitement and stamina that is required for that sort of event. And Bill came right in and just smashed all of those expectations from the get-go.
Well, it's not
that he was high energy, but he was just so planned out and, again, methodical with how he did everything. Like, he really just mastered everything slow and steady and just did it with intention and nailed it. And so, well done.
He did a good job. Yeah. I mean, there have been other bladesmiths that are somewhat elderly that they just don't do so well. I mean, but he killed it. And he didn't have a lot of TV time during the first round.
Right.
So usually that's a good sign. So good job, Bill.
Good job, Bill. And follow Bill on Instagram at Bill Behnke. I follow him.
Oh, cool.
Posts his knives up there. And congratulations. Very nice job on this one. So that brings us to our tally of points,
which aren't changing.
Aren't changing at all because none of us got points because We all did not pick Bill, unfortunately. So, as of the last tally, the score count is still Teresa with 21 points, Chris with 17 points, and Sean with 13 points. And we have somewhere between 2 to 3 more episodes left.
No one knows.
For the season. So I think it goes to 24. We don't know for sure, but it's not looking good for us. It looks like we're going to be buying Teresa some beers.
That's good.
Fine with me.
Yeah.
So there we go. Thank you for watching this episode. Season 5, Episode 21, Celtic Anthropomorphic Sword. And remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube if you haven't already. And keep an eye out. We just announced today a new video series that we're doing called Tour de Forge, where we go to different forges and shops of bladesmiths.
That's right.
Particularly in our area, at least to start. And we work on our first knives. So in the first episode, we worked with at Theo Naz. Theo Naz.
Yeah, I got
Sean's
the Naz shirt on.
repping the shirt in this one. And Theo Naz was great to work with, and he gave us some good instruction on forging the points for our knives. And that's how we started off, and hopefully that'll be up next week sometime. So keep an eye out for that, and thank you for watching. Catch you in the next one. Later.
Big nuts. Just a tip.
Just the tip.